Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. It's the third episode of what has been a jam-packed week, Calum. I'm surprised we're managing to fit everything in.
I know, especially with the Josh Walker issues, but we're here. If you're seeing this, then there's no issues with this video, and we've been in contact with YouTube, and hopefully things will be working out with the Josh Walker thing pretty soon as well.
Yeah, apologies to those of you that have been trying to watch that interview on YouTube. You say, Callum, if you're seeing this, hopefully they're going to see all of it.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the issue on YouTube was it cut off halfway through the interview with Josh. But a lot of you that do listen to the podcast have been enjoying the episode on there. And as I said, obviously, we've had a lot of new subscribers. So welcome if you are new to the channel. We're just 3 away from 750 subscribers, been a real surge in subscribers since the weekend. So probably people eager to see another meltdown, but I don't think based on Tuesday it's going to be quite reaching that level. But we are going to mix things up a little bit on Red Tinted Glasses today. Callum, of course, was enjoying a gig as he tends to do. So missed Tuesday's game. So instead of me asking him about a game he wasn't there, we're going to switch roles, and it'll be Callum firing the questions at me. So it'll be interesting to see how this episode goes. No pressure at all, Callum.
I know, I have watched the highlights, but bear with me. It's new. I might cock it up, but that'll at least maybe be entertaining for those at home. But as always, we will start with the starting 11, Glenn. Joe Lewis returned following his illness, and Connor Barron came in for his first start, with Berserwin dropping out, and then MK33, as you had in the notes, Matty Kennedy, and Jack McKenzie replaced the injured Ross McCrory, and then Adam Montgomery. What were your thoughts on that starting 11 when it came out? Were you happy? Probably, presumably, very happy to see Joe Lewis back between the sticks.
Thanks for dobbing in that I use MK33 in the notes there. But no, absolutely delighted to see the return of Joe Lewis. I think immediately installing some confidence for me, certainly. I think a lot of people were probably swithering on attending the game, on the back of recent results, and seeing a strong, confident goalkeeper kind of certainly filled me with confidence. But I was really excited to see Connor Barron. For me, after the weekend, the real takeaway I had was his cameo. So I wanted to see what he could do from the start. I know there's a lot of people maybe wanting to see Berserwin start as well, but I've not seen enough from him. He shows flashes here and there, but there's not been enough consistently for me to still be disappointed that he's not starting the game. And I think, Matty Kennedy showed enough, certainly in that Celtic game, that he warranted a start. Obviously, Barry Robson viewing that as well. And then I think there's no real surprise given the performance of Adam Montgomery at the weekend that he also dropped out. I thought it was a strong enough side. There was obviously something a little bit different in there with Barry Robson naming his first Aberdeen 11, and really should have been enough to give St Johnstone a decent game, but unfortunately it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, I tend to agree with most of that. On Berserwin, I suppose, it's still very early days, although we have seen flashes of what he's capable of, maybe lacking an end product, but who isn't in that starting 11? So I think it's fair to give him a little bit of a rest. He'll probably, wouldn't be surprised if he comes back in for the weekend. And again, I think Matty Kennedy's probably earned that starting place given some of his cameos recently since returning from injury. But regardless of the starting 11, the last thing you want to do is concede an early goal. And no matter what the starting 11 was, that happened. In the build-up to the goal, though, there was potentially a foul on Johnny Hayes, a barge from Glenn Middleton. Personally, and having seen highlights, few replays, I thought it would have been a little bit soft, but I could see why. Certainly Johnny Hayes, probably in particular, is aggrieved. Do you think we could have maybe benefited from the official's decision there?
At the time, I was raging at Johnny Hayes for not being stronger. I felt that he was, I think probably one of the only people in the red shed to not be annoyed that it wasn't a foul. I think Johnny Hayes is immediately anticipating Glenn Middleton coming into the back of him. And probably when you look at where Glenn Middleton picks that ball up and how exposed our back line suddenly becomes, I'm not sure if maybe Hayes is just a bit conscious that we are exposed and is trying to buy that free kick. So, yeah, for me, certainly I was more frustrated at the fact that, Johnny Hayes just didn't take the ball and either boot it into the stand or just boot it up the pitch and clear the danger. Because with those decisions, we've seen it go our way, we've seen it go against us this season. You're leaving that decision in the hands of a referee. We all know how that's gone this season for us, especially. So when you then don't win the foul, you've left your whole back line exposed. And as so often is the case this season for Aberdeen, we follow it up with some rather comical defending. I said I was excited to see Joe Lewis come back in the starting lineup. He pulls off a great save. It wasn't until I saw the highlights that I realised he actually had another save from Callum Hendry's initial effort. But question marks around the defending once again. And it seems, Callum, every time we do this episode, we're constantly questioning the way we're conceding a goal.
Absolutely. It seems to be basically soft every single time, regardless. I think maybe on another day, you probably maybe do get that free kick for Johnny Hayes, but regardless, after that's not given, you then still have chances to sort of prevent the goal happening. And obviously Joe Lewis comes in, makes a couple of good saves there. Second one kind of hits him, but he's still regardless right place at the right time. And just the defence don't react whatsoever, as we've seen far too much this season. And it was either going to be, Callum Hendry or Stevie May. You know that they were going to play a part in it. Mm-hmm. It was the former. Had to be him, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It was, I think I'd said about a week out when he scored against St Mirren. I remember texting Bruno saying I see Callum Hendry's getting into fine form ahead of the game at Pittodrie. But, and the point that you mentioned about, you don't want to concede early, it's not just against St Johnstone, it's any team in general, but probably more so St Johnstone, a team that every time they come up here seem to try and stuff out a 1-0 win. So to give them 85 minutes of sitting behind the ball, and to be honest, it felt like they started time wasting pretty much from the kickoff at the goal. It was, you just knew we were going to be in for one of those nights. It just had that whole feel to it.
Yeah, one of those nights that we've seen many a time against St Johnstone in particular. But certainly from the highlights, it looked like we reacted pretty well to a couple of chances. Johnny Hayes, Connor Barron, not quite, I don't know, it's clinical, probably a bit harsh on him there for that one. Just doesn't maybe make the best connection and slot it home. Yeah. Scott Brown going on to hit the bar, but I think we maybe got a corner from it, which...
somehow.
Yeah, I have no idea, but... We reacted well from the highlights. Was that the case in terms of general play, having seen the full game, obviously?
Yeah, the chances that are obviously picked out in the highlights were probably the main chances that we did have. And I think, like, if you look on the highlights, the Hayes, Barron and Brown chants all come within about 5 minutes. So it was quite an instant reaction to the goal, and it was obviously, which was encouraging to see. Because given, the form that we've been on, the results obviously haven't been going the right way, it would have been quite easy for the crowd to immediately get on the players' backs, the players' heads to drop. But we never saw that. We saw, straight onto the front foot. Johnny Hayes' attempt, it's a good height for Xander Clark. And I think he made a good save from somebody else that kind of led to the Connor Barron chance, or if it was that Johnny Hayes shot. We're doing this on Thursday, so memory's a slightly bit hazier of that opportunity. But I remember turning to the folk I was with and saying, it feels like Xander Clark's almost having a little job interview for potentially, a job up at Aberdeen. How J. Emmanuel Thomas seemed to put in worldly performances against us last season. Mm-hmm. Xander Clark was just having one of those halves where he seemed to probably saves. Yes, I know people listening will be like, oh, you fully expect him to make those saves, but we've seen Gary Wood should be making sort of saves, and he wasn't doing that. But again, with the Connor Barron one, I feel really, it's really unlucky for him. I think he's trying to catch it on the volley, and it's maybe the heights just kind of evade him slightly, but he does at least get it on target. And then the Scott Brown and Lewis Ferguson had an attempt once Xander Clark had to go off with an injury, but both those attempts were from distance. Scott Brown somehow, the referee, I think, was being generous to Xander Clark and saying he got fingertips to it. I don't think Xander Clark was anywhere near it. But Lewis Ferguson's shot was right at Elliot Parish. And that was the first time we tested Parish. I know he'd only been on the pitch a few minutes, but we didn't really test the St Johnstone goal enough. And for when Zander Clark went down injured the first time to when he eventually went off, we didn't work him really enough to test how bad that injury was, make him dive about. It wasn't until he was diving to try and stop Connor Barron's curling effort, which went just past the post. It seemed to be in the motion of diving that's when his calf went. But, you know, if we'd had the shot been on target and there was a rebound to follow up, he might not be able to get up. It was just really frustrating. I think, you know, Joel Sked tweeted out, Aberdeen are the prime example of a team that are excellent with the ball, but do absolutely nothing with it in that final third. And, you know, when I got home and I saw that tweet, it really summed up my feelings. I know we're still in the first half just now, but, you know, looking at the stats, the data, again, it was 20 shots during the game, only 6 on target. We're really pretty with the ball, but we do nothing with it in terms of, for me, you know, I know people are like, oh, it was really positive, like we showed glimpses of what we could do, but we hardly tested the keeper. This team are bottom of the league. We're at home. It's our game in hand, the chance to go 1 point behind the team in fourth. I was really frustrated, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I think it was Eric Parish that came on, and he was once on trial with Aberdeen once upon a time. We decided not to sign him, but it was the Ferguson one which he struck well, but once again straight at Tatton. And there was one in the second half that Ramirez hit quite low, but it's a save you'd expect him to make. But before, you know, we move on a little bit further, I think it's just, once again, it is a lot better. We are creating those chances, but as it's been time and time again this season, really, just not being clinical once again. But we've mentioned Zander Clark. At first I was a bit, you know, I was maybe a little bit on the side of for signing Zander Clark, certainly on a free towards back end of the season. I'm certainly now 100% all in on Zander Clark on a free, whether that's, you know, I doubt he'll dislodge Joe Lewis, but he'll certainly provide far better competition and a reliable backup. What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, I think I know there's obviously some people that would maybe doubt whether he would come here to sit on the bench, and I probably do share those certain concerns that people have, because he is obviously a quality keeper. But I think, you know, he's shown enough this season, certainly if you want to compare him to Gary Woods, that why we need maybe a so-called better backup keeper. But I suppose the argument will be, can you attract a keeper of his quality to just sit on your bench for the whole season? That's probably kind of going to be the difficulty. And, you know, like on the point that you were making there, you are right. Look, we were, obviously it's a new manager. We're maybe trying something different from when Stephen Glass was in, and maybe in terms of the tactics. And we were, you know, creating in spells, but to you know, the point you said about the kind of Ramirez chance, it saves you expect the keeper to make. And for me, that was it. We were creating, but when it came to actually getting a shot off, it was at the keeper, or it was at an area that you expect the keeper to save. There was never really something you were like, oh, that was such a great chance. We really probably should have scored. And maybe we'll come on to it in the second half with the chance at the end of the game. But yeah, it was just one of those where I didn't really feel we did enough to win the game. I know maybe there's other people out there that will feel differently, but that was how I took it.
And then halftime came. Barry Robson made a change. Basawin came on for Declan Gallagher. First of all, for anyone else who was not at the game like my good self, was that tactical, or did it look like Gallagher was maybe struggling a bit?
Well, at the time, I thought it was very much an attacking tactical change, and he certainly picked the crowd up. You know, when you saw Basawin coming out, well, you saw the afro first, and you thought, who's that? Like running down the touchline, ready to come on. But Barry Robson on Sports Sound when I was driving home saying that it was actually due to Declan Gallagher picking up an injury. So again, looking ahead to this weekend, it's a bit of a worry. Look back to the January transfer window. Obviously, Ross McCrory picking up an injury at Motherwell. We're now finding ourselves once again short defensively. Never thought I'd be saying this, but I think Michael Devlin might be fit for the weekend to fill in there. But look, it was a sign of intent from Barry Robson to, you know, inject a bit more into the team, because certainly in the first half, as I said, we looked good going forward, but that's all we really did. We looked good going forward without being threatening. going forward. And it was a good positive change. Scott Brown then dropped into centre half as he's done previously, and he fills in okay there, so there's no real issues.
Until then, he has to go off injured. So, looking to head towards the weekend, it's not looking great. Roll on. It's really bad when you're longing for the return of Michael Devlin, who's made of glass, or Andrew Constein, who's now 34. Because right now, David Bates, our only fit centre half, which it's not what you want, but hopefully Gallagher's injury is not too serious, and come the weekend, he will be able to at least play through whatever it is if he's not fully recovered. But
but I suppose on that, was Lewis Ferguson obviously then dropped into centre half. Funso Ojo came into midfield, and Lewis Ferguson now was actually really impressive at centre back. But one of our better players this season, whatever you might have thought of him post Motherwell and then carrying into this game, he put in a good performance at centre back. But you don't want him at centre back. You want him in midfield or further forward, being able to influence the game.
I mean, he's certainly played deep enough at times for us to fill that centre back. But then Barry Robson continued to make changes, which whilst I was at the game, I was sort of trying to keep up with things at the time. And I did notice the changes coming through. Adam Montgomery coming on for Jack McKenzie, Funso Ojo for Brown, which is obviously forced through injury, and then J. Emmanuel Thomas for MK33 for the last 15 minutes. How do you feel sort of Barry Robson did throughout the game? For me, on the face of things, that looks like he's, other than what was forced through injury, he's trying to be positive, trying to influence the game and make the changes when things aren't working for us, which is something maybe that Stephen Glass had come into criticism for, perhaps leaving things too late or not making enough substitutions at all.
Yeah, well, it was actually a rarity, and I was corrected during the game, because I thought with the change at half time, I thought you were only allowed 3 sets of substitutions. So I thought when the Scott Brown substitution, which occurred after Montgomery coming on for McKenzie, I thought that was us out of subs. But because that took place at half time, it meant we were allowed the substitution for Jet coming on for Matty Kennedy. And look, we've been ranting and raving about managers not being able to use more than, or not wanting to use more than 2 substitutions. So it was great to see him use the whole squad. Jet came on and was Jet. Matty Kennedy's legs were gone by that point. So I wasn't really surprised to see him come off, and it offered some additional support up there for Ramirez. It offered a target. Well, it should have offered a target for long balls up. He held the ball up well enough, cleared the ball well enough from corners. It seemed to St Johnstone just found his head. But again, there was times where, when the game's finally balanced at 1-1, I'm wanting a player to be chasing down the ball. I'm wanting him to be running into a tackle that's maybe a 50-50. I just don't see that from Jet. And when you're playing that game in hand, as I said, that was becoming an important game, you want players on that pitch that are going to give 100%. And I'm not saying Jet's not giving 100%. It just feels when you're watching him that he's not applying himself fully. And it's really frustrating. And on the left-hand side with Adam Montgomery, I was really critical of him after Motherwell. And again, I didn't see enough there that convinces me that he's going to improve this squad. I really feel that he's just been kind of brought in as somebody that can, stock fill that position because Jack McKenzie is maybe not fit enough to last 90 minutes. Still working his way back to fitness, and Johnny Hayes as well. We're benefiting from him further forward. So we almost needed a left back. I know people will be saying the point about Kieran Ngwenya, but as you've already alluded to in previous episodes, we're benefiting more from him being at Kelly Hearts potentially. But yeah, I was just kind of looking at him. He put a couple of good balls into the box, but defensively got caught out a couple of times. And yeah, I'm less than impressed, I have to say.
Fair enough. It was interesting. My dad mentioned yesterday that he was quite impressed with Adam Montgomery. He thought he looked a bit quite neat and tidy, although not causing too many problems. And he also mentioned about J. Emmanuel Thomas that he looks a little bit overweight as well. So it'll be interesting to see, first of all, who comes in the door and whether they can sort of get him up to speed, get him sharp, and see the J. Miles Thomas that we probably saw at the start of the season. Because I thought we'd send an absolute worldie of a player there.
How wrong were we? But I suppose that's the thing. Like, folk are going to have different opinions on Adam Montgomery, on Jet. People will think, maybe I'm being overcritical, and that's fine. Look, we're all entitled to our own comments, opinions, and if you've got a different opinion, let us know in that comment section. Tweet us at RTG_podcast. We'll love to hear the different views that we've got. And, maybe for me, it was still the frustration of the weekend and obviously what's happened since. We've not even won a game this calendar year. I'm maybe just at the point where that apathy is just fully set in for me. So to see, in my eyes, players not applying their standards as they should be is more frustrating for someone like me than maybe somebody else.
That's certainly fair enough. It's a game of opinions and we're all allowed our own. However, in the second half, I think we all knew coming into this game, even before they got the one goal to hold on to and then subsequently went further on. How do you feel we did in that second half? Tough to break down. For me, the highlights, it looked okay, but obviously you have a more rounded view than I.
Yeah. Well, you were asking about like how I felt like Barry Robson was doing. I remember looking over to the touchline at one point, and he was running up and down the technical area, shouting at players to get into the tackle, get up, chase the ball after. There was a real energy on that touchline that has certainly been missing for maybe people that have been watching Stephen Glass over the last few weeks. He was quite hands in his pockets and very much observing what was going on. So you could really feel that if you spent the time kind of looking over there. And that did seem to rub off on some of the players. We did pick up the urgency and put a lot more pressure on the St Johnstone goal that second half. However, I still feel similar to the game against Motherwell at the weekend. We were too slow at times. When we got to the edge of the box, we would pass back and then it would go. There was times Bazawin, Ojo and Ramsey on the right who would pass between themselves, 2 or 3 times and then get the ball in the box. Or on the left-hand side, Montgomery would feed Hayes and you think that's fine, perfect, whip it across. And Hayes would get to the byline, cut back, pass it back to Montgomery, and it was just a slow floated ball into the box. And, against a team like St Johnstone, that's bread and butter for them to just knock away. You're wanting something whipped across, get a ball in with a bit of pace, make it, if they slice it, it could go anywhere. A bit something pace for your strikers to get on the end of. And yeah, it just felt at times we slowed down the possession unnecessarily and we became a bit predictable at times. But look, it wasn't for the want of trying. There were certainly, and I think Barry Robson, he was, he sort of said he was a bit proud of the way the players responded to going 1-0 down. And I can see where he's coming from on that because, we didn't let the heads drop. We did, keep going at St Johnstone. We obviously had a goal disallowed as well, and unlucky at the end with the header from Christian Ramirez. It was, I thought, really well saved by Elliot Parish. But it was just one of those things. I never felt we were going to be scoring from open play. It just had that feel to it.
Thankfully, we did end up getting the spot kick. It was Calvin Ramsey, I believe, that got fouled. Yeah. It was a little, fouled. And I think there was a couple of trips, and he did go down. I mean, if we don't get it, then you're probably aggrieved that you don't. But now that we did get the penalty, a little bit soft, but we needed it, and we take it. And obviously, Ferguson did step up to slot away quite confidently before having another penalty shout later on too. But a penalty for you?
Well, I think from where I am in the red shed, I couldn't quite see if it was inside or outside the box.
I think the first foul was outside, and then there was a second one inside, which was for debate.
Yeah, and I think I just saw him go down, and I was like, oh well, like he slipped or something. It didn't really look like he'd been fouled. And folk were like, just thought they were just appealing for it, just trying to like warm themselves up by shouting. And then you just saw the referee point to the spot, and I was like, oh, right, okay, decent, we'll take that. And it wasn't until I was watching the highlights back the day after, because I was wanting to kind of see that Ramirez chance, which the highlights didn't even show. It's never a penalty, but I think, when we've had a couple of stonewallers turn down, the Ryan Hedges one, Lewis Ferguson at Livy, it's about time we got a decision in terms of a penalty going our way. And yeah, when you've got Lewis Ferguson as cool as you like from the spot, probably enjoyed that goal, silenced a few of the boos that he was on the receiving end of.
He probably did. First of all, how impressed were you with Calvin Ramsey? We've maybe been critical of him recently, probably not through any fault of his own, with the tired legs, the rumours, probably messing with his head and being at such a young age. Obviously, it looked like he'd been at the Vicente Pessoa school of being sniped for that penalty. But overall, on the whole, how were you impressed with him?
Yeah, I mean, it probably goes back to a bit of the debate folk are having. Is Calvin Ramsey better as maybe a winger than he is defensively? Because he didn't really have much to do that I can recall in terms defensively, and I wasn't annoyed at him defensively for the first time in a while. I was probably still think his delivery can be improved into the box, especially from set pieces. Those floated corners do my nut in. We've maybe scored from a couple in this season, but see when he doesn't get them on the money, they're so infuriating to watch. So I think his delivery could still be a bit better from that. But if that's the only thing that I'm going to take away from the game, then yeah, I suppose he had a good performance. And willing to constantly get forward, you can't begrudge that, and that's good when we were chasing the game and driving into the box and winning the foul if we're going to call it that to get the penalty. So
yeah, I think in terms of his set pieces, if you're going to float them in, they then have to be perfectly on the money. Where if you go for a whip, then there's just a chance that anything could happen, I suppose, in there. But it was interesting to hear Robson said in the post-match interview that he'd taken Calvin Ramsey into his office. I'm not sure how long that'll be the case, or if it's just a temporary setup one, which is good to hear, because I feel like he did need it. I think Robson did mention that as well. So that's certainly encouraging, certainly from a man management sort of aspect from Robson. But we then obviously in the game didn't go on to get a winner despite having a goal disallowed. From all the angles I've seen, it's almost impossible to tell if he's offside, how far he is offside, if it's a close call. And I presume it's probably the case for you in terms of Christian Ramirez at the other end too. Yeah,
well, I just want to go back to that point on Barry Robson that you were making about Calvin Ramsey. First of all, I have to say I've been really impressed with how Barry Robson has come across. Obviously not having the experience of managing a first team before, the way he handled himself in that first press conference, the way he shot down Andrew Shiney when he asked for team news and just said no, and Andrew was like, not even anything, and he went no, and that was it.
I just that.
At least one fan media podcast is getting access to press conferences, but I just like that bluntness with the press. Don't give them anything. Don't let anybody into what you're thinking. And if he's got that kind of nous to pull players aside and have a quiet word, I think even Connor Barron said in his post-match conference that Barry Robson pulled him aside and said, just go out and enjoy it, show everybody what you can do. So he's obviously giving those players a little bit of confidence, a little bit more freedom, maybe forget about the external noise and external pressure that maybe being applied. Just go out and enjoy your game. And it's good to see that he's got that kind of way of thinking about him, really. So that's encouraging. But yeah, on that Ramirez chance, I just saw the flag go up really early. So I wasn't really paying attention to even who scored or who knocked it home. I just knew it was offside. So I just stood there whilst everyone else around me was celebrating, just waiting for everyone else to realise it was offside. So, but yeah, again, it's that depth perception you get from the Merkel. It's really hard to even know if it is or isn't.
Certainly, and then with a severe lack of any decent camera angles too. But that sounds familiar to Ramirez's goal versus Celtic. Everyone around me was going mental, and I was standing looking at the linesman, knowing that he's given offside. But regardless, I suppose it was good to see Bissauan react and then go on to prod the ball home, and he was trying to get the fans up for it after as well, which you love to see.
Yeah, he was definitely the school of Christian Ramirez in terms of geeing up the fans, both hands up in the air. And, the crowd did respond to that. And like you said, we began putting pressure on St Johnstone with balls into the box. I think there was the penalty shout that you referred to was that the one where Lewis Ferguson won the header and then was kind of barged in the back?
It was pretty similar to the Matt O'Reilly one, really, sort of opposite side.
Yeah, but you know what my opinion on that Matt O'Reilly penalty shout was as well. So my opinion on the one that on Tuesday night is going to be the exact same. I didn't think there was anything in that as well. He's also managed to get his header away before he's challenged anyway, so it's not had an influence on what he was doing. But like I said again, I just didn't kind of feel that we were close to scoring from open play, and it obviously needed that set piece to produce the goal.
But then I also had that late chance with the Ramirez. But in terms of St Johnstone, it didn't look like from the highlights that they had many opportunities, if any. Do you feel the same? They obviously tried to counter-attack on us, soak up the pressure first. Do you feel they threatened us enough?
Yeah, I think there was two chances that kind of stick out. There was one where Glenn Middleton was bearing down on goal. I can't remember who it was. It might have been David Bates that got across really well to block the shot. Apologies if it's not you, David Bates, but take the praise whilst it's being handed out. And I remember there was another incident with a ball over the top. And both these came down the left-hand side, and Joe Lewis was absolutely fuming at Adam Montgomery for not closing the angle on, I think it was Glenn Middleton again. But I actually did feel a bit sorry for Montgomery that time, because if he did close the angle on Middleton, it was just a simple ball out to the right back who was bearing down on goal, and he would have been caught out, and the right back would have been able to get in and into the box. So I could see why Joe Lewis was raging, because it was a shot that got away and got on goal, but also you catch 22 from Montgomery there. But yeah, other than that, St Johnstone really didn't threaten. I think there was a corner that they had that one came in from the main stand side. Jet tried to flick away and it ended up going out for another corner, but then he managed to head the next corner clear. But Stevie May was just looking for niggly fouls. Him and Lewis Ferguson seemed to be having a little battle between striker and centre half that Stevie May was definitely not winning. But yeah, kind of similar to us, St Johnstone didn't do anything to probably work Joe Lewis enough. So they got their noses in front, but in typical St Johnstone fashion, once they go 1-0 up, they'll just chuck everyone behind the ball, time waste, and hit you on the counter. So yeah, from our point of view, disappointing, because losing that early goal gave St Johnstone something to hold on to throughout the game. Whereas I think if we'd scored the first goal, obviously that would have had to open them up. So just one of those days, unfortunately.
And then that was that. Overall, do you feel as if it's 2 points dropped? I think if we got offered that result, ahead of the game, we'd have been very disappointed. But almost weirdly, the performance gives some sort of reason to be positive, having seen some of the reaction despite the terrible defending.
Yeah, but I hate this kind of feeling now that we're coming away from games being pleased with performances, but the results aren't forthcoming. Like, after the Motherwell game, we're out of the cup, but we're pleased with the last 5 minutes of the way the game went. Or, well, in particular, I was pleased with Connor Bowen. But, same with Celtic. We've lost the game. We did a good second half. That gives us encouragement for the rest of the season. Jonathan May, we like him, we lulled into a false sense of security by that second half against Celtic. But just because we're performing well, you've got to translate that into results. And right now, we're not doing that. And I think, when you're coming up at home to bottom of the table, regardless of the run you're on, okay, we sacked the manager a couple of days before, you've got to be winning your home games. And we have had a good home record this season. Only Celtic and Motherwell, I think, are the only two sides that have beaten us at Pittodrie. So to come away with just a point, I'm just really frustrated, because had we won that game, you just set us up going into the game of the weekend Did you say we'd be level or ahead of points on Motherwell going into this game?
If we win on Saturday, then if we won tonight, then we would be level on points with Motherwell going into that game. Yeah, and then if we go and win on Saturday, then we'll go level on points with them and maybe on United because they play Rangers.
Yeah. So again, given the fixtures, if you're looking ahead to the weekend, we'd have had ourselves in a comfortable place.
Sorry, I'm wrong. We'd be 1 point behind Motherwell right now because we got a point, obviously.
Okay. But even then, we'd still be, as I said, in a kind of better place. We're sitting 8th just now, but we'd be back in the mix. But now we're 3 points off 4th place. We're giving ourselves lots more work to do. So, definitely is 2 points dropped.
Yeah, well, I think that concludes my section of being the one asking the questions. I quite enjoyed putting you on the spot, Glenn. A peer review, how do you think I did?
Yeah, I think, well, you've shown some strong performances in the interviews with Josh Walker and Lee Mayer. Remember to stay tuned, hit that subscribe button to get notified of when that's coming out. I think we've decided on a date for release. We're going to keep that till the international break, ahead of the trip that we make to Dens Park for a reunion with Mark McGee.
So excited.
Which takes us nicely into the segment that we're going to look on here, because Calum, if we thought our manager search was, causing issues on social media with people, at least we're not taking a leaf out of Dundee's book and appointing Mark McGee.
Yeah, I mean, thank God. I mean, we are sort of snooping around. It seems like Scottish managers now, but there is apparently 6 candidates. The 2 names we're only hearing right now is Goodwin and Ross, and that perhaps provides confidence in the fact that the only reason Scottish media knows about those 2 is because they are Scottish-based. Who might the other 4 be? Who knows? But it'll be an interesting one, that's for sure.
Yeah, and fair play to Dundee for appointing a manager that's also got a 6-game ban to serve when you've got 13 games in the season left. Big up that. But yeah, as it appears, it feels certainly. We're recording this on Thursday lunchtime for release on Thursday evening, but it feels certainly calm just now. We're in a bit of a 2-horse race for the next manager at Aberdeen. Jim Goodwin at Aberdeen seem prepared to meet the 250,000 release clause in Jim Goodwin's contract. Obviously, the cheaper option is Jack Ross, given his current state of employment. Thoughts, if it was to be between those 2, who would your maybe preference lean towards?
I think my preference would probably lean towards Jim Goodwin, certainly with the sort of style that we'd not only seen but heard about from from Jack Ross at Hibs and the way it sort of ended for him. I think my preference would lean towards Jim Goodwin. I think he's doing a pretty good job. He's doing a good job with it. Maybe interesting to see how he could do with a bigger budget. No respect to many fans, obviously, given their results have gone their way against us this season, probably are a bigger club, you would say. It'd be interesting to see how he would do in that situation. But I am keeping my eye on the fact that they keep mentioning that there's 6 and we only keep hearing about 2. I really want to know who those other 4 are, but I don't think we will until maybe one of them's appointed. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But I'm a big fan of. I know the club were having a meeting with a couple of people about the situation in the Red Shed pre-match on Tuesday, and the people involved were actually asked by the club who they would like to see appointed as a new manager, and one of them replied with Paulo Di Canio. So interesting to see if the club are listening to the support on the appointment, and maybe how they feel that the support would react to certain appointments. But yeah, I agree. I think Jim Goodwin out of those 2 would be my personal preference if that's who the 2 were between. But like you said, there's obviously some other names in the mix, not Kjell Knutsen either. He's ruled himself out of that role. So interesting to see if there is maybe any foreign involvement linking themselves to the job, or if it will just stay kind of in-house in terms of being Scottish.
Certainly, I mean, you like to think they would maybe broaden their horizons somewhat. I certainly hope that asking fans is not the official recruitment process that the club are going to go with, but it is vitally important that they do get this one right after the way the last one's gone and the way this season has gone essentially. And a little bit of a personal plug, I will be running a Jack Ross versus Jim Goodwin simulation on Football Manager, so subscribe to the Calum YouTube channel to check that one out as well. Tomorrow morning by the time this comes out. There you go.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go.
But it will be Barry Robson by all accounts, unless things drastically change by the time we've recorded this to release, that will be taking charge of the team as we head back to the scene of the Scottish Cup crime, as the Dons head to Fir Park looking to avenge the Scottish Cup defeat and probably, start to correct what has been a very horrendous set of form away from home this season. Will Barry Robson bring about a change in fortune to that away form, Calum?
I certainly hope so. I hope he brings the thunder, as he said pre-match against St Johnstone. God knows we need it. Not only the team need a performance, but I think the fans need a lift too. But the problem is, it's Motherwell, and if one team's got our number, it's certainly them so far this season. If one man's got our number this season, it's certainly Kevin Van Veen. Who just seems to love playing against Aberdeen, knows how to get under our defence's skin, and then has a bit of quality about him too, which is just a little bit frustrating. But this one coming up it's massive. Having said that, if we do then not go and get a result, maybe not a total disaster, given it's obviously a coach who's in interim charge, but we could do with it. It would set us up nicely for going on for the back end of the season, hopefully under new guidance.
Yeah, I think they'll maybe come on to it in a little bit, but you say that Motherwell have definitely had our number this season, scoring 2 goals every time we faced them this season. It seems to be Kevin Van Veen's got a personal vendetta against us this season between him and Yacht of Celtic, 2 players that seem to take playing us very personally. But we know from just last weekend that it's going to be a physical encounter. Motherwell will look to be, take us on, be direct. I just wonder, with the success Kevin Van Veen's had against us this season, how much, we are going to miss not having 2 out-and-out centre halves, or how much is Lewis Ferguson going to relish the battle this weekend coming up against Kevin Van Veen?
As much of a concern it would be to have one of your better players, maybe you could argue one of the best this season, in centre-back. Those who've done it previously against Kevin Van Veen done a terrible job of it. And Lewis Ferguson, after the last time in Motherwell, you got a bit of fight about him. Let's hope he can channel that into that. And it would be an interesting battle, certainly. I feel like he maybe is the type of player who would relish off that kind of thing, where I'm not certain, David Bates is going to relish off a bully of a centre-half. Whereas Ferguson, I don't know. I feel like he could be up for it. And weirdly, I'm almost leaning to that being the case.
Yeah, I think you're right. And what's going to be interesting is who's going to be on that side of defence will be up in trying to help Calvin Ramsey, who obviously got a torrid time from the Well boys in that cup game. And it'll be interesting to see if they come out and support their team as much as they did last weekend as well. I'm sure whether they do or not, there'll certainly be a very vocal backing towards the home side, and they'll be looking to wind up Calvin Ramsey again and get on the backs of players such as Lewis Ferguson, given, as you said, the way things transpired last weekend. I said after the Motherwell game, I thought, Calvin Ramsey allowed himself to get wound up by the Motherwell fans. How crucial is it that the players, keep their heads not just in the battle with the likes of Van Veen and in midfield, but also to anything that's coming in off the sidelines with it, because it's close proximity to the pitch that stand. There's going to be a lot of abuse coming their way, and if things aren't going right, we've got to have the players keep their head.
Certainly, it's very, very important. I think the problem for me is because when it's been turned into a battle, Motherwell players love that, and they've come out on top. They've probably not got quite as much quality you would think in terms of on the park. However, for a lot of it this season, we have seen teams turn it into physical battles, turn it into niggly games, and that's a lot of the time been our downfall. So it is vital they maybe don't get drawn into that, or on the flip side, by Robson does inject that thunder, and we are up for it.
Yeah, I'm also sick of Gogsy getting the upper hand on us every time this season with his bragging rights and his vlogs. But in terms of having that fight, I think it's been fair to say Scott Brown's fight, maybe in quotation marks there, it is certainly been lacking in recent weeks, of Rangers games aside, but then Scott Brown seems to save himself for these games against Rangers. With him likely to be missing the game in terms of playing capacity beyond the bench, I'm sure, in his coaching role, how much then, if Lewis Ferguson moves back into centre defence, are we now relying on Funso Ojo to bring that bite into midfield? We know he likes a fight, we know he likes a battle, just look back to Tannadice. He's certainly one that won't shirk away from something like that.
I hope not. It could be a very, very interesting midfield if Brown's missing and Ferguson has to slot into centre-back. Then with, well, as you mentioned, not only Funso Ojo, but Connor Barron probably then certain to start too, which can probably only be a good thing. Exactly, given the way sort of he's featured for us recently. And he also just brings something completely different. He's got nothing to be afraid of. And he goes out and is direct and tries to make things happen. So it will be interesting, but then you will then be looking to Funso Ojo for that experience to help Barron through that game in the middle of the park, which then makes Ojo's role even bigger.
Yeah, and I think that middle of the park is going to be where the game's kind of won or lost. And I would like to see Barron continue, holding on to that starting position, because he looked lively in that cameo against Motherwell. I thought, he was one person that was always looking for the ball. He was never shirking away, hiding on Tuesday night when things weren't going right, always calling for it, always running into space. Hand was out, pass me the ball. And as soon as he got the ball to feet, his head was up, looking around, seeing where he could get, see what he could do. My mate standing next to me said that it reminded him of Billy Gilmore, which I think I actually called out on the podcast during that, awards episode. Something you brought up. I know it's early days, don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there is definitely, I think, when we've been watching, let's be honest, some pretty rubbish performances, it's quite easy for a youngster to stand out, and this looks certainly to be the next, big thing maybe to come out of the Aberdeen Academy.
Certainly, he does seem to offer something a little bit different to what the rest of those players do, and I think we'll have it with exactly what Robson said. Basically, they know what he can do. He knows what he can do. Don't be scared. Go out and do it. Why not? But I do really enjoy when you do demonstrations of things as well, calling for the ball there, and you're a little getting upset about the penalty earlier too. So please keep that up, Glenn.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. I like to keep you happy when we're doing these things. But I suppose in terms of being direct, we saw what Connor Barron can bring, but we've also seen in glimpses so far during his spell at Aberdeen of what Vicente Bezouen can bring when he's got the ball. Obviously, he was heavily involved in the build-up to the goal that Christian Ramirez scored last weekend. I would actually not be opposed to see him replace Matty Kennedy for the game at the weekend, because, again, he's still that bit of an unknown quantity in terms of the Scottish game. He likes to get the ball down and run, and it might just be the fact that it was the last 5-10 minutes and it was on a heavy pitch, but I felt Motherwell looked uncomfortable when we got the ball down and ran at them last weekend. And, that's what happened kind of with the first goal as well. We ran at them, got a good ball into the box and scored. So you want the likes of Barron, Bezouen to be playing those players that are going to cause the Motherwell backline problems.
Certainly, and I would probably say I'd like to see Bezouen and Barron in addition to Matty Kennedy getting up in support of Christian Ramirez, because if Ferguson's going to be deeper, then we won't have him getting up in support. And we certainly look a lot better when you've got those direct players who like to run at a defence and get the ball across and make something happen with a little bit of urgency. So why not, basically?
True. And I suppose you said there kind of at the start, given it's going to be an interim manager taking charge, as we assume to be this weekend, what the pressure will be like to get a result. But Calum, given that we didn't take 3 points against St Johnstone on Tuesday night, I think there is a lot more pressure, maybe table pressure anyway, to go and get a result this weekend, because we've got two teams that are currently above us coming up in our next two games in close proximity in both Motherwell and then Dundee United. But looking into March, we've got a double header against Hearts and Rangers. It's some tough fixtures coming up. So the need, especially if we are still harbouring top six ambitions, we almost need 3 points here.
Probably need 3 points here, and then we probably need 3 points looking further ahead to Dundee United as well. Certainly with those further two games on the horizon too, it's massive. The table is still very, very compact.
Yeah.
If we win on Saturday, then we go level on points with Motherwell, level on points with Dundee United. Obviously, there's still a few more teams in there, Hibs, etc. We might go and pick up points this weekend, but then we're straight back into the mix and sitting in a decent position, and it builds confidence going into then the game against Dundee United. Go on and get a good result there. Why can't we go to Tynecastle and get a good result? We were unbeaten against them so far this season, and then Rangers unbeaten against them so far this season. It's vitally important, and then with a new manager coming in as well, might get that new manager bounce. We need the thunder. We need the Barry Robson thunder.
So to maybe continue my negative sound to this episode, as people might be thinking would tell me that if we get a draw this weekend, I shouldn't be overreacting as a negative.
Much to think about. It wouldn't be ideal given the fact how much a win could help us and put us in a decent situation.
Yeah.
Also, with the way the season's gone, however, on the flip side, it would be better than we've got so far against Motherwell this season.
Oh, true.
So it would, I guess, in a way, be a sign of some sort of improvement. But then at that point, you probably turn to see how the performance was, whether we were lucky to get a draw or maybe we do deserve better. But it wouldn't be a disaster, but we are running out of games to pick up these points. So it's very important that we do go and get all three.
Well, Calum says it's very important that we go and get all three. We will be back next week looking back to see if we did get all three or if I indeed will be overreacting to another poor result, as some of you may say. And also we'll have the latest on the search for a new manager to replace Stephen Glass before looking ahead to the home game against Dundee United and, of course, the return to Pittodrie for Sir Alex Ferguson. Boy, I hope the games are improving for his appearance, because it's going to not be enjoyable for him.
Oh, they really, really need to be, don't they? It would be a massive disaster if he comes in and has to endure a terrible Aberdeen performance. Also, I'll quickly mention, keep your eyes peeled for the Josh Walker video going back live. We don't know when that will be at time of recording, but we're hoping sometime soon, before the weekend, would be nice.
Yes, and of course, if you don't want to watch that episode, it is of course available back on audio as well. But as Calum says, hopefully we will get that back out on YouTube as ever. Thank you very much for tuning in, whether it has been through listening or watching. Leave us a like, leave us a comment if you are watching. Give us your feedback. Who do you think should be the new manager? What are your hopes for the weekend's game against Motherwell? Is it crucial we pick up that 3 points? And if you are on social media, tweet us at RTG_podcast with your thoughts, and we'll be back and see you next week.
COYR.